sometimes tell. But dreaming was like a big thing growing up. When we were, and I'll skip around a little bit, but one of the things that I was able to do with my dad is we coached basketball at Faith Heritage. The first year we coached, we took over, so I was actually a freshman in college, had just graduated high school, and we coached basketball. And the team was really talented, but they were all told what they couldn't do. And I think that's so much what of life is telling us who you aren't and what you can't do. And my dad taught the kids how to dream. And I try not to get emotional. I am a very emotional person, so I will warn you. But I remember that was like the beginning of the season was, guys, don't think about what you can't do. We're gonna win a state championship. And this is a team that had never won a sectional championship. And we spent a lot of time just getting the kids to dream about who they could be, what they could do. We ended up making it. We went undefeated in the regular season. We made it to the sectional championship. And we played a team that the year before, I think they were up like 49-11 at halftime of the year before. So the kids, it was like, okay, this team is like the Goliath. Like we're never gonna beat them. And so the day before the game, instead of practicing like we did, this intense practice, let's run through everything, we did basketball mini golf. And so we made all of these ridiculous games where like you were playing, you were actually like rolling the ball into holes, and then we took the kids and we just said, let's just dream. Like what would happen if we won? And how does this look like? And what he always has said is there's dream stealers and there's dreamers. And don't listen to the dream stealers, because that's what our world is teaching us, is all of the things we can't do. And so that really was just inspirational. The kids did end up going on. We did win the state championship. We went 27-0. But what stuck with me was not the wins or with the kids. It was dreaming. And so part of what I want to talk today about is what world tells us that we're not, but how to like be who you are. Often in life, we're told, especially in like, I was talking to my wife about this, in school, we have kids now that are coming up, and we homeschool, but they still go to like dance and they're around other kids. And often in school and with other kids, everyone is telling you what you're not good at. I remember I had a lot of conversations with some people about like grades. And you come home with your report card, and usually if you're the parent or if you're the kid, the one that you're worried about is the one that you did bad on. Not necessarily like the ones you did well at, but the one that you did bad on. And that's what we dwell on, is like what we're not. So I just wanted to share today with you like some things that have happened in my life that have helped me to figure out who I am, and how I try to lead as me. I often say to those who I work with, I'm nothing if I'm not me. And I try to just be authentic in who I am. A lot of that is just being vulnerable about like the situations that happen in life. And Megan and I have gone through a lot, as has like really everyone else. We don't need to always put up this veil of strength as a leader. Oftentimes what really allows you to lead is for people to be able to relate to you. I currently, so I worked for my dad at one point in time. When I moved home from Boston, I worked for my dad. My dad had a small business at the time that was a struggling business. He had taken on the business from a business partner that kind of left him in a lurch. And so I moved home from Boston and I was looking for a job, and my dad was like, I had someone quit, can you come work for me? And when I was working there, I was a fuel technician. This is nothing I had ever been trained for. I had 1 week overlap with the guy that quit, and then that was it. And a lot of the times my job was to go to places that were down. So I remember one job was I had to go to a gas station in Beeville that had been struck by lightning. And they were obviously not happy because they couldn't sell gas, and I had no help. And I often smelled like diesel or gasoline at night. But I really learned in those situations that even with people being angry and frustrated and like, hey, we need this up, that I could figure it out if I just took my time and tried to like, take a break. But with that, it really taught me to persevere, and that I could do a lot more than what I thought I could do. It's interesting, how God creates these situations. Because when I moved home, so I went to school at Gordon and I lived in Boston for a year, and then I moved home. And so when I moved home, I had this idea that I was going to go work for another software company here, because that's what I do for a living. I was a software programmer. But God had other plans and wanted me to work for my dad. And I remember just, all right, I can do this, I can figure this out, but every day was a challenge, in that we couldn't order parts for people because we didn't have the money to order them, but I needed the part to fix the thing. And so I was constantly dealing with customers that were frustrated, or situations where I had no idea what I was doing. And in those situations, it was really just that the one I would figure it out is when I just took a break and paused and took a moment to breathe. And so I did that for a year, and my dad and my mom went to Kenya, and they came back from a missions trip, and my dad walked in the door, and I can still visualize this actually. So he walked in the door, and in our family room, like you kind of walk in and you take a left, and there's a recliner. So he sat down and I said, Dad, I quit. I mean, I'm not kidding. It was probably like, I think your butt like touched the seat, and I was like, I'm done. This is not what I'm meant to be. This is not who and so I had learned through that, like, this is not, despite the perseverance, this is not what I was called to do. And he still brings that up from time to time. You couldn't give me like one day. So that was in August. I did end up working for him all the way until the end of March, because I didn't find a job that was really what I felt like I needed to do. But yeah, I was done smelling like diesel and gasoline. When we got to my new job with my business partner, who I work with now, we ended up, so my family had an ice cream shop, and how I ended up with that is my business partner, he stopped by to see my dad. And I was cleaning an ice cream machine, getting ready for ice cream season. And Mark was talking to my dad, I need a guy, I need a data guy. And my dad was kind enough, even though he needed me, to say, you should talk to Mike. I think Mike's the guy for you. And so I'm outside like cleaning an ice cream machine and basically having a job interview at the same time while I'm doing it. And I end up working, Mark ends up hiring me on April 1st of 2008. And then I am still working with Mark today. So it's been 16 years, which is crazy. Time goes fast, and especially nowadays, you don't really hear many people that are in the same company 16 years later. But that is a door that God opened for me. Mark coached basketball with my dad and I, but none of us knew what Mark did. There was always a joke that Mark was a hitman, because like he just was always available. And he always wore like a velour tracksuit. That was like, so none of us knew. So the first week of me working with Mark, we had to go down to Delaware. And I'm like, all right, Mr. Hall, because that's what I called him. He's like, Mike, you can't call me Mr. Hall. You have to call me Mark now. And that was, was Mr. Hall. That's all I ever knew him as. And we went down to Delaware, and I was dumped into a client and a project that I had a little bit of technical depth with, because what Mark did was he worked for hospitals, and when I lived in Boston for a year as a programmer, I worked as a software programmer on a medical EHR system. And so this client actually used the software that I programmed a small piece of. And so I was dumped into a room, and Mark kind of left. And I realized that like what I had been going through for the last year really equipped me for that, of, okay, I can be here and I will be fine. I can figure it out if I take my breaths, if I just take time and breathe. So we drove back to Syracuse, and then I ended up going down to Delaware 3 to 5 days a week by myself to figure out a project. In that project, I ended up like doing all of it. I had to mimic what someone else did the year before, and I thought I was all done with it. And I got back to Mark, and I was like, I'm done. And I gave it to him, and he's like, did you reconcile this? Which I guess is like the first step. And I didn't do that. And so everything I had done was wrong, and so we had to start over again. And I ended up getting it all figured out. But working with Mark in that first few months, he taught me that he just kind of reinforced the same thing that my dad and I had learned over the last year of like, you know what, you can just, it's okay to make mistakes. You're just got to take your time and figure it out, and you'll eventually get there. When, I'm going to fast forward a little bit. So I was Mark's first employee. Mark started the company in 2005, and it was just me. I worked often out of my family's cafe, which was a Broadway cafe in Arctic Island. So we had the ice cream shop in the cafe. And I know myself, like I need noise and distraction in order for me to focus. If it's really quiet, my brain goes everywhere. But if there's like a lot going on, I can focus really well. So I always worked out of the cafe where there was always a lot going on. And one day, Mark and I were in there working, and one of the guys was like, hey, Mike, the registers are down. And I'm on a client phone call. And I'm like, I'm on the phone. And Mark's like, it's okay. I'm like, no, we need an office. I'm done with this. And so we ended up getting an office, and we had a few employees. And one of the first employees we hired was my best friend. And at the time, I was really excited. This was someone who did not do what we did, had no technical training, but I really felt had the opportunity to do this. And what ended up happening, is he ended up leaving unexpectedly. My wife and I were really close with him and his wife, and that really hurt us for a while because we were so close, and it all of a sudden was like, no, I'm gone. And when the way he left was about as bad as you could leave. It was in like the crunch time where, if you guys don't see me in May, it's because I'm working. And that was exactly when he left, right in the middle of it. And on top of that, we had no idea. So it wasn't like, hey, we're thinking of leaving, we're looking at this. It just was like, hey guys, I'm gone in 2 weeks. And they moved out of the area. And so we learned through that of just that no matter what happens in our life at that period, we will always continue to move forward and be okay. I think I still have pain from that, to be honest, because these were people that were in our will to take care of our kids. That was how close we were with them. And that for a while, had Megan and I put up some shields because of the pain that had caused. Over time, we've learned that's just life, right? Is you can't control everything. You can't control relationships.
Right.
That you have to risk in order to have reward is a big part of that. As time went on, we ended up hiring a few more people. We're currently a company of about 30, which is very different. So I started as doing my own thing, and then now I'm not doing my own thing. I'm helping keep something going that's 30 people. It's a very different role. 5 years ago, well, I guess it's almost 6 now. So in 2018, my business partner had a stroke. I can still also remember this phone call. So this was a Thursday night in December. Megan had her sister and a friend over. They were baking Christmas cookies. And I went upstairs. I had an office up above our garage at the time just to sit down and do a few things because we were getting close to Christmas and I wanted to finish up so I could actually be off. And I got the phone call from his wife. She's hysterical. Mark's had a stroke. I need you to come to the hospital. So I immediately run downstairs and I'm like, I think Mark had a stroke. I got to go. I don't know what's going on. He got, he did the take me to Kraus. And so he was at Kraus, and because we're in healthcare, like we know, like he knew a lot of the higher up people at Kraus, so he was immediately flagged as like someone that they needed to take close attention to, because he was like the CEO at the time was actually someone who had worked for him at one point in time. But when you get to Kraus, I had never really been to Kraus. I came up through there's the below the ground entrance, and you kind of come up in the middle of the hospital, and there wasn't anyone downstairs when I came across, which was a little weird. Usually there's a security guard, but there wasn't. So I literally just came up in the hospital, and I had like no idea where to go. Person, redirected me to Mark, and I finally got over there. I beat his wife to the hospital, and so I'm just sitting there, and I did not know what was going on. I was told, she got there, and it's just me and her, and we were told there's a 50% chance that he would make it through the night. He had a stroke that, from my understanding, 50% chance to make it through the night, 98% chance that they would have to drill a hole in his brain in order to relieve the pressure. We made it through the night. A lot of that was, I would say I was in shock, but I also wasn't able to process anything because I felt like I had to be there for his family. His kids did not live in Syracuse. He has 2 children. And so I was helping navigate, what do we tell the children and when do we tell them? We don't want them to hop in a car and drive across from Connecticut to here in the middle of the night. And then also just trying to organize everything. And so I ended up leaving the hospital at like 2 in the morning, and he was stable, but we didn't know what the extent of the damage would be. The next morning, I had to get up, and at the time, our company, he was acting as an interim CEO of Syracuse Community Health Center. So I had to go there before I could even go to the office, because I had to tell them that like, this happened, but we're gonna fulfill the contract because we needed to. So it meant that I had to kind of step into that role, which I had never been a CEO, and try to manage a very difficult situation with a company that was in a financial distress, which is why we were brought in, and trying to turn it around. And then also go to my office and like tell my partners and my team, hey, we're gonna be fine. Mark had a stroke. I've got this. And that was that was like a really interesting time for me. I remember Megan and I had 4 kids. About 2 weeks later, we found out we were pregnant with our 5th, which, to be honest, was like a shock as well. We love Ellie. We were not expecting a 5th child. So it took us some time to like, okay, all of our life, all of our plans that we had just like felt like we were getting to a stable point kind of fell apart. Go forward. Mark was out, like completely out for about 6 months. And so at that time, managing the health center and our business, and I'm just running around like a chicken with my head cut off. Mark is a kind of coming back, and I'm able to ask him questions on the phone and keep him updated, but I'm managing a lot of different situations and different people. And the only thing that really like got us through was just spending time together. Doing a lot of prayer. I'm one that when I drive, I'm often not listening to music. I do a lot of talking to God or talking to myself. And so that was a big piece of it. It was just constantly praying. It's by the grace of God that we made it through as a company and as like a couple. Mark has come back, but he's essentially, like his left side is limited. He does not have like full mobility of his hands or anything. He's there cognitively, which is great. So I am able to like, I think part of what was hard for me is, at that point in time, Mark and I had been working together for 13 years or 10 years, somewhere in there. Time's a little confusing. So he had become like not only my boss, but one of my best friends. And I wasn't able to process any of what that meant of not having access to him, of not wanting to share what really was going on because I didn't want to jeopardize him having another stroke, and trying to figure out, like, what does this look like, where I was always given free reign at our company. Like, Mark was someone that was just, he was one of the, like my parents, he told me, just be you, right from the get-go. It was never, he never asked for me to apologize for anything I ever said to him. He's never asked me to be someone that I wasn't. He just wanted me to be the full version of me. And having that relationship from someone that treated you like that, ripped away overnight, was really hard. And it's taken time to figure out, like, how to process that. So about 2 years later, Megan knew that I had a lot that I had been carrying, because of trying to manage that tension of what can I say, what can't I say. And so she pushed us to go see a counselor, which was one of the best decisions that she ever pushed me to do, honestly. We still see the counselor, but, like, that is another piece that I think is really important for people to realize, is that having someone that you can talk to, that you can just be bare in front of, and not worry about how it's going to affect a relationship. How is it going to affect what they think of me? How is it going to affect, I'm an overthinker, if you didn't know that. So I often overthink everything. And so having someone that I didn't have to overthink or over-engineer or overanalyze what my conversation would be with them was really, really powerful. And so with that, I was able to kind of unload a lot of anger over the situation. I think I was angry at God for, like, how could you let this happen? How could you take this person that was, like, full of health, full of energy, that was doing so many good things for you, and take away that ability for him to be him and be him for me? And honestly, after, like, one session of counseling and just saying that out loud, it was gone. My anger was gone. And I think a big part of all of the things that I have gone through in life, and that we all go through, is ways for God to show us, like, who we are and who we're meant to be. And I think there's different tools that God has taught me over the years to do that, and counseling is a huge piece of that. Megan was really thoughtful in finding the right counselor. I think we were able to find a counselor who was a believer, who I truly feel was, like, in tune with the Holy Spirit, and continues to be. And is someone that when we, often, so we meet with our counselor like twice, every other week, although it doesn't happen all the time due to life, but in those, a lot of the times we'll have no idea what we need to talk about. It'll just be like, all right, we don't really have anything, and every time something will come up, it's like, hey, we needed to process that, or we need to think about that, or this is going on with our kids, like, what can we do differently? How can we help them? How can we look at this differently? And having that time to have someone else that is in tune with the Holy Spirit, like, be there with us to help us process all of that, has been really, really powerful for our family. And so I definitely wanted to share that I think counseling is one main area that you can look to try to find out more about yourself and who God wants you to be. One of the other key things I wanted to share was just community. And a lot of the things that we've gone through, Meg and I felt like community had been pulled away from us. Between, like, what happened with my friend who I had hired, between what happened with Mark, we've tried to find community and then it disappears. But I think what God has often taught us is we need community in order to be that mirror, to show us who we are. counseling is one way to have a mirror, but having a community of people who see you and can challenge you is really important. When I have led people, the people that I think struggle the most are people who don't have community. They lack the true awareness of what is going on or who they are. And one of the things that my mom and my dad have constantly demonstrated is how important it is to have those close friends. And not just like, we have family, which is great, but you need someone else besides family. And so, and then the last 5 years, about 3 years ago before we came to the Orchard, Megan and I were trying to figure out what's next. Mark was healthy and back. This was like COVID, so a company where I had to be there every day. I didn't have to be there. I could work remote. We didn't feel like we had community. The church that we had gone to, a lot of the people that we were closely knit to, had moved away during COVID. And we were just praying, God, if we're supposed to move somewhere south, let us know. And God answered that, I think, pretty definitively that we were not supposed to move somewhere south. MJ invited us to go to the Orchard. Megan ran into her at a homeschool thing, which was just an act of God. We started coming here and have really connected with a lot of you here, Justin, Nicole especially. But also, at the same time, God opened another door for me, which was through a group called Profound. It's not a believers group, but it's a mastermind group where some people had launched a mastermind group for people in Syracuse, for business owners. And I got asked, well, actually, I didn't even directly get asked. An email came around hey, if you want to apply, apply. And I applied and I got accepted, which was shocking because I just did not think I would get accepted. And I went to the first group, and one of the things they asked you was well, why did you apply? And I applied because I was scared. It was my answer. This was something that I've been comfortable for too long. I needed something different. I needed a change. And being forced to meet people, I didn't know anyone at all. I had no relationship with anyone that I knew I would have a relationship with going in. And so I just felt like I needed something to change. I needed community, but I was scared to have community because of all the pain. And that is something that I've created a lot of relationships out of with both believers and non-believers that have just really changed my life over the last 3 years. John Tamino is a part of the group now, who you guys know from In My Father's Kitchen. The church has done a lot to support him. But just having other people that I could talk to that are leading businesses, that when I run into issues, I can just give a phone call and ask questions to, has been really helpful. And then finding a few people in there that are believers, and just seeing how in life there's often people that are in the river, either ahead of you or behind you. And God puts them in your life for you to figure out either they're supposed to help you or you're supposed to help them. And oftentimes it's you're kind of going back and forth, where that position and whatever the challenge might be will flip-flop depending on who needs help. But I think it's really important with community to try to find those people that you can connect with on a deeper level. We as a society often want to keep things surface level, especially at church, really anywhere. I am guilty of being someone that has come and gone and not said much to people very often. A lot of that is just an excuse that I'm tired, or I give so much during work that I come here and I don't have much left to give. But it's an excuse. I'm fully guilty of that. But I would just encourage you all to find that community and pour into the community, because in order to find yourself, you need that community to be a mirror and help you discover who it is that you are. So I do have a few slides that I just wanted to share. So Jonathan, can you go to the first slide? So one of the things that I wanted to leave you guys with is ways that God has helped me and continues to help me try to figure out who I am, because I think that's so important, and that's something that God wants each of us to know. So this one is prayer and reflection. So I think spending a lot of time in prayer and reflection is really important. As I've gone through the sermon, I've done so much reflection. Asking someone to share their story, that's natural. It's really interesting how many different things God brought to light that were encouraging, and seeing like how many things you've overcome in your life. So I just encourage each of you to spend time in prayer and reflection. Can you go to the next one? All right, perseverance through adversity. And this is something that all of us go through constantly. Life is not easy. One of the things that we did when we were coaching is we called ourselves the meat grinders, because we, as a basketball team, were just going to grind. And we taught kids, like, how do you get through and win a game? You grind, you grind, you grind. And that is life. There is not a period in life where you reach, at least in my life, where I reach ultimate happiness and everything is butterflies and rainbows. There's blips of happiness, but a lot of times it's content. It's trying to find content and acceptance of, like, this is where I'm supposed to be, and how can I make the best of it? And what can you learn from the different things that you're going through? I think gaining awareness about yourself and what things make you feel certain ways or trigger ways that you like respond to people is really important. And a lot of that is like perseverance of just going through difficult times is what makes you really grow from that. You can go to the next one. We talked a lot about this, but community and counseling to me is